Chapter 28. The Sorcerer's Warning. Dylan crouched in the shadowed courtyard of the crumbling castle, his back pressed against cold, moss-slick stone, the word cursed, scrawled in streaked blood, glaring from the rusted iron gate. The Vale's wail echoed outside, its thorned, void-like form clawing at an invisible barrier that held it at bay, but the scratching from deeper within the castle, slow, deliberate, like metal, dragging on stone, rooted him in place, his heart pounding with terror. Fear paralyzed him, the choice between facing the Vale's hunger outside or the unknown horror within the castle's depths too overwhelming, his concussion throbbing, blurring his thoughts into a haze of dread. A flashback surged, sharp and vivid, pulling him back to his coastal town on Earth, the memory heavy with shame. He was 22, slouched in his dingy apartment above the laundromat, the air thick with stale beer and cigarette smoke, his phone buzzing incessantly on the sagging couch. It was his mother, her name flashing on the cracked screen, her calls a daily ritual he'd grown to dread, each one a plea for help, her voice frail from illness, begging him to visit, to help with bills, to be the son she needed. He'd ignored her, scrolling X instead, numbing himself with memes and whiskey, telling himself she was fine, that her cancer wasn't that bad, that he'd call tomorrow. Tomorrow never came. Her calls stopped a week before he learned she'd died alone in a hospital bed. Her last message, a voicemail he never opened. Her voice a ghost of love he'd betrayed with apathy. The guilt was a knife, twisting now as he huddled in the castle. His starry scars itching faintly, a spark of anger flaring. Not at himself, but at the coward he'd been, pushing him to move, to be more than that broken man. He stood, trembling, his bruised ribs aching, his hands raw from acid sap burns, and forced himself to the creaking wooden door leading deeper into the castle. It groaned open, revealing a chamber cloaked in darkness, the air thick with dust and a sour tang of decay that coated his tongue. His boots scuffed on cracked stone, and he spotted a pile of mouldy cloth, a rusted flint, and a splintered torch in a corner, its wood damp but intact. Fumbling with shaking hands, he struck the flint, sparking the torch to life, its flame casting jagged shadows across walls etched with faded runes, their glow long extinguished. In the flickering light, a skeleton slumped against the far wall, its bones yellowed, draped in tattered sorcerer's robes of faded indigo, shredded and stained with crusted blood. An amulet hung around its neck, a dull crystal, pulsing faintly, a magical ward that seemed to hum with dying strength. The skull was tilted, its empty sockets fixed on Dylan, and in one bony hand clutched a crumpled parchment, its edges brittle as if untouched for centuries. Dylan's stomach churned, nausea rising at the sight of death so stark, but the scratching from deeper in the castle, closer now, a low groan joining it, drove him forward, his torch trembling as he knelt beside the remains. He pried the parchment free, its surface rough, the ink faded but legible, scrawled in a shaky, desperate hand. The sorcerer's dying note unfolded a tale of horror in a diary-like confession. I, Tharion of Violoria, scribe this in my final hours, trapped in this accursed ruin, my legs shattered, my wards fading. Lord Eryvath, this castle's master, struck a pact with a demon of the Bloodwild, a shadow-born horror of hunger and malice, promising it the souls of his enemies in exchange for power to crush rival lords and seize Valoria's trade routes. He swore to deliver Starshatter, a divine essence, as tribute, but greed consumed him, and he hoarded it, breaking the oath. The demon's curse descended like a storm. Eryvath and his noble kin turned feral, their eyes black as voids, their laughter cruel, flaying servants alive, burning peasants in the courtyard, their screams a symphony of torment that haunts these walls. The bodies, maids, cooks, village folk, were dragged to the catacombs, their flesh torn, their cries silenced. But one night they rose, grotesque and ravenous, their rotting skins sloughing off, arms severed yet grasping, guts spilling like wet glistening ropes, jaws dangling with broken teeth, eyes milky but burning with unnatural hunger, wielding rusted swords and axes that scraped the stone with each shambling step. They tore the nobles apart, eating Eryvath and his kin alive, their blood pooling in the halls, their screams choked by crunching bone, but I, shielded by my wards, fled, wounded by their blades, my leg broken in their chase. I'm trapped here, surrounded by their groans, unable to reach my study where my chest holds Gravemarrow, a short sword forged to end these undead forever, and potions to heal and escape this hell. Dylan's hands shook, the torch's flame wavering, the note's vivid horror sinking into his bones. The zombies, born of the demon's curse, were nightmarish in Tharion's words, flesh peeling like old parchment, limbs missing yet moving, entrails dragging across stone, their slow, laboured steps relentless, wielding weapons with jerky, unnatural swings. The note warned that normal weapons only slowed them, severed heads or limbs would crawl, re-knitting with the demon's power, an endless cycle of hunger. His scars flared, a star-shatter vision hitting hard, a crimson hall, zombies lurching, their guts trailing like slick cords. The vision faded, leaving Dylan breathless. Unbeknownst to Dylan, the blade he sought was cursed. Killing a human with Gravemarrow would awaken horrific visions, a craving to murder that twisted the wielder's soul into a mirror of the demon's malice. The scratching grew louder, a guttural moan joining it, the stench of rot seeping through the walls. Dylan's heart pounded, his concussion blurring the edges of his vision, but his anger burned brighter, not self-loathing, but a fierce resolve to be more than the man who'd abandoned his mother. He spotted a rusted axe by the skeleton, its blade chipped but heavy, its handle worn smooth, and grabbed it, its weight grounding him against the rising dread. The sorcerer's study lay somewhere within, holding Gravemarrow and salvation, but the zombies' groans echoed closer, their shambling steps a promise of death. The flashback to his mother's unanswered calls stung, her voice a ghost urging him to act, to fight, to be better. Dylan gripped the axe, its rough handle biting his burned hands, and steeled himself to find the study's chest, to wield Gravemarrow and carve a path through this cursed ruin. The veil waited outside, its hunger barred but eternal, while the zombies' moans filled the castle, a grotesque chorus of the demon's wrath. Dylan, scared and alone, resolved to face the horror, his heart a defiant spark in the suffocating dark.